The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Hey, Ilya.
Hey there, Ben Rock. How are you?
Good. Better than you. I hear you might have a slight ailment.
It's not a slight ailment. No, it's, there might be a little bit of coughing in this episode because, yes, I have contracted COVID for the first time since this whole pandemic started, at least first time I know that I've had it. So, it's a thing. Yeah. I understand. 2 thumbs down.
So, Ilya, your COVID notwithstanding, buck up, man. Let's do this. Who is on the show today?
Johanna Coelho is on the show today. She shoots The Pitt. I don't know if you've caught The Pitt. It's a great, great show on Max.
Buzzy show. Everybody loves it.
Yeah, the final episode just recently dropped, so you can go watch the entire series right now, and it is absolutely worth watching. It's sometimes a nail biter, sometimes a little gut wrenching. It's got stuff happening there, and I think that's what you want from a medical show. So I think give The Pit a try if you haven't seen it, and we get into all the good details about the show. And I'm gonna actually recommend, if you haven't seen the show, maybe it's worth watching like the first episode before listening to this interview. I just think that after you see, I think having the results in your head will make the interview even that much more enjoyable, especially because she talks into how it's essentially a fixed lighting situation for pretty much the whole set inside the sort of ER area. And we get into all the details of it. But when people are watching and wondering, like, how did they do that? She explains how they do that, but I think that they moved incredibly fast. They move incredibly fast. That is a fast-paced show, and they figured out a way to do it. And it's really great to talk to her, and it's really great to get all the details. So yeah, it's a good one, especially for fans of the show. A good one for people who want to learn how they did what they did.
And now, Close Focus.
Awesome. So let's get into our close focus. And to me, nothing seemed more apt for our close focus than the NAB conference that we just went to. You took your product, Betty Lights reflectors there. We did 2 interviews, and hopefully next year we'll do 2 more. Maybe next year we'll do 4. It was great. We had great crowds. Great questions from the crowds.
I don't think you'll be able to see in either of the camera angles how many people showed up, but there was probably nearly 100 people who showed up to Alice Brooks and you to talk at like 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. It was like
Vegas. Holy crap.
Vegas. It was like there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of people showed up for you guys. It was
well, at 9 a.m. on Sunday in Vegas, you're like, you should be at the Bellagio buffet. You should not be. You shouldn't be going to a Q&A. And yet they showed up, and Alice was amazing. And then you interviewed Adam Bricker. I wasn't able to be there for that one.
Also a great turnout. Probably at least 50, 60 people showed up for that. And Adam was so gracious and so wonderful. He hung out afterwards. He talked beforehand. He answered a lot of questions. It was awesome. And those will be going live, I think, relatively soon. I don't know exactly how soon, but quite soon. So yeah, I don't think the footage has been edited yet, but it's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be in the feed. We're going to do all the things.
Let's talk about the NAB conference writ large. I always like to look at like what are the trends that I'm seeing in stuff, and I feel like there was a little bit of a Paul cast across the convention this year, and it was kind of twofold. One is production is kind of down, so it doesn't matter how exciting and sexy your new production toys are. If you don't have anything to shoot them with or use them on, then it's kind of cool, but it just kind of felt like morale was down. And I say this, it had been maybe 10 years since I'd been to NAB, but many people said they thought it was kind of just a low energy show in general. And then on top of that week, all these massive tariffs were announced, and I would guess, a giant percentage of the of the stuff that you're seeing on the NAB floor is coming from a country that might be tariffed, or in the case of China, heavily tariffed. So like they can't really give you realistic prices of what something is going to be, no matter how exciting it is. But that being said, I still thought it was awesome. I love looking at the new toys. I love seeing how people are bending technology. Michael Cioni and Strata won an award. Strata was out there representing. I saw them. I saw a lot of products that I thought were kind of cool. I already had downloaded the new Adobe suite, so I'd already kind of poked around in that stuff. But it was neat seeing kind of demos of that. It was neat seeing DaVinci Resolve. But post is in its own wing, production is in its own wing, and then there's always, every time I go to NAB, there's always one thing that I see a lot of. That I like, an unexpected product that I see repeatedly. And this year it was probe lenses that have zoom lenses on them.
Interesting. Yeah, there were a couple of those. I think that probably the fanciest one that I saw might have been from our sponsor, Laowa. Laowa did some really amazing stuff this year when they came to NAB. They were not pulling any punches. They also had a super zero distortion wide angle lens that is super lightweight and everything else. They had a whole series of them, actually. And you know what? Preview for our upcoming sponsorship ad later. I'll talk more about that, but I don't want to dive too much into it. But yeah, interesting. I saw a couple, but I certainly didn't see more than a couple. But that's maybe they just were in a lot of people's booths this year. So.
Yeah, I saw several of those. And yeah, the Laowa booth was awesome. And I met up with my old film school buddy, Mark Walpole, who I introduced you to. And I guess he listens to the podcast. But we hung around the Laowa thing, and like those lenses. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be stealing the thunder of the ad later, but I was very impressed with their lenses. But yeah, it had never occurred to me before I saw that you could have a probe lens with a zoom lens on it. And I spent a lot of time trying to recreate the iconic shot from Jaws and Vertigo with the probe lens. But and there was another booth that had a probe lens, and they were like, "What do you think? Like, whose is the best?" And I'm like, "I'm so easily impressed with any probe lens that it's really hard for me to tell you which probe lens is the best." I mean, we could certainly line them up and do the Pepsi challenge on 3 or 4 probe lenses at a time. But yeah, they're more affordable, I should say, and they're also they're a little faster than they have been, and then now they have a zoom lens in it. And it's not don't expect a massive zoom because it's a probe lens, but it'll get the job done if you need to punch in a little bit.
Yeah, one of the demos that I was seeing was the dolly and zoom out vertigo effect type of thing. That's very, very popular. But I think the real magic and power of having the ability to zoom in the probe is like being able to cheat it. So as you are pushing in or as you're pulling back on something, then being able to continue the feel of the frame expanding or the frame pushing in, that's a really extra great feature that a prime probe lens is just not going to give you, which gives you so much more production value. Which is, I think that there were some other interesting trends going on at the show this year, and definitely attendance was down about 10%. The official number I heard was about 5,000 people less than last year, so I think around 55,000 people, something like that. Versus
That's still quite a lot of people.
Still quite a lot of people. Now, there's a couple of factors to that too. Besides the fact of the tariffs, there's also sort of the customs and immigration policies, which have been really, really beefed up. And I definitely felt like overseas visitors were really down this year. Quite often, this is a very international convention. People come in from all over the world. I did not have as many connections with people who weren't based in the U.S., and it wouldn't surprise me at all if a big portion of that decline was people who decided, you know what, I'm just not going to deal with aggressive border protection when I go to show up and have my phone searched and all that stuff. So I think there might have been some people who said, I'm just going to stick this one out for now. And it's a lesser show because of that. It's really great to get the international perspective. I really look forward to meeting people from all over the world at this show, and that for me is a highlight. And there was a lot less of it this year, but there was interesting stuff happening in lighting, and holy crap! Sponsor of the show, Aperture, had an incredible event that took place outside of NAB and went on for days, and they had all kinds of things on there, and they had
us at an awesome super secret dinner that they threw. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was fantastic. But it was really interesting just to see all of the continuous lighting brands that are popping up out of the woodworks. And it used to be that when they popped up, they were not doing great stuff. It used to be like, small brands that like, you're like, well, I don't expect to see them in 6 months. But more and more of that sort of like entry level of lighting, sort of player in the space. It'll be interesting to see that it's like the quality overall has kind of been raised. So it's interesting to see what people are going to be using to light with in the coming years, because really, really interesting stuff. Lots of lenses, a lot of new lenses from especially lower cost Chinese companies. I spoke with several of them who told me that, yes, you can expect our new lens prices to go up with the tariffs. That was definitely a topic of conversation too for a lot of people was, hey, this is what we say it's going to cost, but what will it really? I know we just basically talked about that, but it's interesting to me because it dominated the conversation. And it's almost pointless to talk about because the tariff situation like changes on a day-to-day basis. So if you're getting lenses in 6 months, it'll definitely not be the same situation that we're in right now. There's a ton of coverage out there from places like newsshooter.com. And so I would actually say that if you want to get into the weeds about all the different stuff and see like the award winners and see all the different things, check out newsshooter.com. We're not going to solve anything on this podcast about like, well, can I say one of the things that like really stuck out to me that I really enjoyed, which was the demo from Lucid Link. And I sat in for a full demo, and they basically are a post-production, I don't know what you would call it. It basically, you can have, let's say you have your director is in America and your editor is in China, and you have an assistant editor in Peru. As long as they all have stable internet connections, you have to upload the footage once, and then they can they don't have to download it. They can access the footage kind of through a portal, and everyone can work on the same project. It's a pretty amazing product. And Strata actually had something kind of similar where you could have like a hard drive in one place and multiple people could access it. And I guess we're seeing a lot of innovation in that kind of realm. And that's all post-production. But, as we get into, systems that like shoot and upload directly to the cloud, and there's a lot of that going on, production and post-production merging, getting, tighter and closer together, potentially, if it suits your project. It's good to see, what people can do. And yeah, Lucid Link is one of those things where it's like, I don't need it right this second. Oh, it's also a subscription service, so you can subscribe for it for the period of time you need it. It's like, I don't need it right this second, but who knows? In 6 months, I might have a project that needs something like that. Well, to wrap up NAB, I'll say that I got to do something I'd never done before in all the decades that I've been going to NAB. I got to go to the Product of the Year Awards. So the Product of the Year Awards always take place the end of the second to last day from the show. So that's where you got COVID. It could be where I got COVID. I actually have no idea where I got it. But at the Product of the Year Awards, I found out some interesting things. If you would like to have a product considered for Product of the Year, it's $500. So in addition to all the thousands and thousands and many thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars that you pay NAB, if you would like to have a product considered as an NAB Product of the Year, you have to pay an extra $500. So anyone can pay the $500, and then they're a nominee for Product of the Year, which is why you see these booths all over where it says, Product of the Year nominee. I didn't realize what that was, but I see it all the time. And I was thinking like, really, this is Product of the Year? And sure enough, now I understand there's a little bit of like a payola thing, but they have an awards ceremony. They go really fast. They give out a ton of awards, and the people, there are actual like members of the press and the media who do go through and, vote for various products. And so, it's not entirely just NAB willy-nilly deciding who wins these things, but it explains a little bit more about the sort of award thing. I know a lot of news magazines and different sources, they'll also give their awards, and it's a great example of us saying, hey, we think this is really interesting and cool, but I had never actually been to the awards ceremony and never actually gotten to see it before. Anyway, congratulations to all the winners, and
congratulations to you on bringing Betty Lights out there.
Thanks. We didn't know we had to pay $500 to be nominated for Product of the Year, and I've never been a pay-for-play type of person, but we did have an incredible showing and had met a lot of people, and we did meet some people from other parts of the world who were like, when can we get hands on this? So this is all positive signs going in the right direction. I can't wait to show things to people at the JL Fisher Barbecue, which is the next public event that the Betty Lights reflectors will be featured at.
Excellent. Well, shall we get to our interview here?
Let's get to the interview with Johanna Coelho from the Pitt.
The Cinematography Podcast Interview.
I'm joined now by Joanna Coelho. Hey, thank you so much for being on the Cinematography Podcast. You've got a hit new show on Max called The Pitt.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you here. And the show is so much fun. I've been watching it. I've been really enjoying it. Tell me what it's like to, or actually I should ask you, how'd you get this job? How did this job and you come together?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough that my agents at Innovative Artists pitched me for the show when they heard about it. And so I went through a different step of interview process. And, by reading the scripts and talking with the producers and executive producers, I kind of came up with visual styles and how I felt the camera should be moving inside the show so we could feel immersed. And I did a pitch with that, and I think they liked the idea, so we decided to collaborate together.
Fantastic. All right. So you get the job, and you've got the scripts, or the collection of scripts, because it's an interesting show. It sort of takes place over like 14 hours for the entire season, and each episode piggybacks directly after the other with basically no breathing room. There's no jump in time. How was that to shoot? I mean, is continuity and progression? Did you guys shoot the entire show in sequence as well?
Yeah, so it's actually 15 hours, 15 episodes. Each episode is 1 hour representation. And we did shoot in order most of the time. There was a few exceptions that we couldn't, like some scenes shot in Pittsburgh. We obviously had to do it together in a week, and then they were kind of spread out in the episodes. But every time we could, which is 90% of the time, we shot the scenes in order for each episode, which really helped keeping the continuity on set, because when everything is continuous, it's extremely hard to make sure everything matches from one day to the other, or one scene to the other. And it was really important for cinematography, but also for props and actors and everything, like dialogues, to really understand what just happened before, so we can keep going on the same line.
Yeah, it's it feels like there's a lot going on visually, like the show is complicated. I know it's not actually complicated. As your process, everything makes sense, but you have so much action, so much movement, so much crossing. What was the thought process when you started to break this down of how the show would all fit together?
Yes, we really say it's like a live theater. The way it's choreographed, because, even though it seems we're just following, but it's really a giant choreography when you think about it. It really, everything is based on the blocking and what the scene is about and which perspective and which character we're following. So, every time we break that down, when we had a blocking, we would just really analyze, okay, whose perspective is it? Who are we following here? And what is happening? What does this character we're following is seeing? At what time, and what are the little things happening in the background that we should also notice at the same time? Because that's the thing, the way the set is built, it's all open. And the reason for that is that there's no place to hide, and there's always something else happening in the background, right? So when we define all these elements, Then we would start choreographing the camera, and then once we, decide, the movement of the camera, we choreograph the background. So then you can feel the cross, you can feel everything that's happening. There might be element where in the scene there's a gurney passing by, and that's something we need to notice because the character thinks about that character passing by, even though it's not for the scene right now, So it's all these little things that we had to take in consideration, and that then would build up the shot. And then, obviously then we would bring in the camera operators and really with them talk about all of this, and they had the operators really added their own take on it as well, so we kind of gave them the base element of anything we were looking for, and then they were really amazing, and they would bring on even more in the scene, that's things we were not thinking about, and the operators would see it as it was happening.
I kind of want to dive into this a little bit deeper, just because you're right. The choreography, the blocking that takes place, it's a large cast. It's an ensemble cast, but then there also feels like a large number of extras that are going too. And when you talk about crosses and movement, sometimes it's main characters, sometimes it's extras. Usually it's a combination of all of these, but the camera is crossing too. And you've got cameras, it feels like, that are being hustled in and shoved into what's happening on a gurney or an operating table, and then it pulls back out again, and then more things happen, and it's this dance of going back and forth. How much of that is found on the day? How much of that did you guys plan before you start shooting? I assume hour by hour, show by show, you kind of have a rough idea, but how much tweaking goes on? I bet there's a lot.
Yes, I think the scene overall of what needs to be seen in the background, that might be just a little line on the script, right? You have the main scene, but on the script you always see a line and this person is crossing in the back, because that's going to be important for something else later, right? So these elements are integrated in the scripts. So obviously when the directors go in prep, they think about that. They think about the blocking they want on the day. So these elements of the scripts are showing with the blocking. Now, because I shot the 15 episodes, I was never really in prep with the directors. So the way it happens anyway is we really define the shots as we do the blocking. So the shot list is really made on the go, wow. But it's so defined by the movements of the characters and what's already on the script that it kind of flows, It's not something that you have to really pre-plan, and except, specific scenes things we shot in Pittsburgh or anything like that. But for inside the ER itself, it's defined. It's a choreography defined by the blocking of the actors. And so we watch it, we define the blocking together, and then we define the choreography. And so that's planned on the go. Now, because of the way it's shot, the way everyone moves, we do no marks on the set. So,
wow.
No
marks.
There's no marking. Okay. There's no lighting on the ground. It's a 360 set completely.
Oh, wow.
So the way it really works and it really moves, there's always a little difference happening in every take. And, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. So if it's not good, we redo it or we adjust it, right? But you'll always have something a little different with background, or even just the way the actor moves, or the speed of a line, anything, So we kind of embrace, the adjustments as they happen during the takes too. And if they work, we push it even further if we liked it, or we take it back if it's not the right thing for that scene. Just when you think about it, the play of focus in these takes, the way sometimes you're in the foreground and then it goes to the background and it comes back. The timing of this focus racks, are not always defined by me. It's the ACs have a huge part as creativity in this show as well, because they know very well the scene and they're like, oh, here's a person, it's earlier, but let's go now, right? And then they go there and they come back. So we embrace adjustments that are happening in each takes if they make sense for the scene.
That makes a lot of sense, and I really get it, and I feel that on the show there's a sense of immediacy, and having been a focus puller myself, I understand it's sometimes you can wait for the line, but sometimes the moment certainly feels a lot better to go a little bit earlier, to go maybe a little bit later because of what's happening. So there's so much energy to the show. The next question I have is about lighting, but it's it feels like the set is incredibly open because there is so much moving around and direction change, sometimes whip pans, sometimes just quick movements. Is all of your lighting more or less set then too? 360 degrees, you kind of you turn on the lights, let's go? Or are you still having to tweak and cheat and do all the usual stuff?
So the lighting inside the set is mostly integrated. So when we built the set last year, before starting, we really worked together with the production designer and, my gaffer. We also had another gaffer coming in. His name is Johanna Coelho, and he came in to help us out to figure out all this lighting inside the set as well. So yes, once we go, we're mostly ready. We never wait for lighting. Mm-hmm. There is, a few adjustments happening during the takes within the set, because basically if you're looking one way and the character turns, I can bring up the lighting overhead, like behind the camera. You won't see it, right? So that happens during the take a lot. The gaffer talks with his dimmer board person and then really adjust everything during the take. Now, sometimes, because most of the lighting is overhead, sometimes we need a bit of fill in people's face. Though the set is all white with, surfaces that are white on the counters. This is a natural bounce, and that's the reason why we're able to do this. Uh-huh. But when we need a little extra, when we're really close to them, or it's a specific place on set that's missing a little bit, we have actually custom-made onboard lights on the matte box, and this one are also, adjusted during the shot when we need to. So we have one on the right of the matte box, one on the left of the matte box. Uh-huh. So depending where you want the source to come, right, a little more left or more right, we use the right or the left, or sometimes we use both. And sometimes the camera moves, right, and now you have a reflection on that glass back there, right, because we have so many glass windows on that set. Then the gaffer would dim down that light so we don't see the reflection of the light in the window, and then put it back on. So it's a play of lighting. The lighting is completely choreographed as well, but it's choreographed within the set. Wow. Sometimes we also, in some situation where we need a little more than just onboard lights, we have an electrician following with a pole and a battery operated light on it with a diffusion on it. So sometimes we use that as well. Actually, a lot of time we have, but it's all moving lights. It always moves with the camera.
I was really curious about that. And is what you've got mounted to your matte box a custom solution, or is it something off the shelf you've just found a way to connect?
It's custom made by my gaffer, actually.
Oh, very
cool. It's a combination of LED strips that are connected to the camera for power, and he made a little box 3D printed in collaboration with the key grip. Mm-hmm. They had a 3D printer, and we did a lot of these little tools for the set because we were in unique situations. Speaking about that, about lighting, you have situation where, we have troffers all over the set. So if you have two people walking and they stop right under the troffer, even though it's a natural looking show and all that, we are mindful still to be right under light, and it might be a little intense on them, mm-hmm. right? So what my key grip did in collaboration with one of his grip who does 3D printing, mm-hmm. They made these custom frames that magnet to the troffers on the ceiling. So you have the ceiling of the hospitals that are really this grid, right? Mm-hmm. He made perfectly matched frames on the troffer. So you can, even if you record it in the shot, you wouldn't know there's a frame there. So we were able to pop in frames like this to magnet them on the ceiling.
And the frames are like flags? They're just blacking it out? They're just knocking it off completely?
It's literally a gel. It's a gel within a frame. Uh-huh. And the frame is a perfect match of the actual grid.
That's perfect.
Of the ceiling. And it's all magnets. So they were doing that with cans too. They made the cans, if you see them in the shot, you would notice them. So we didn't do that while we were seeing them in the shot. But they had some cups they made for the cans if they was too harsh on people stopping under it, magnet, and they had a tool that they made to attach it. So they created some diffusion tools that were custom made for fitting inside our set as well, without having anything on the ground. We have no stands, no flags, nothing.
Wow.
It's all about controlling the light and adding these frames and diffusion.
What's the approximate height to the ceiling in most of the areas that you're shooting, sort of like the bullpen and the operating rooms? Do you have a pretty high ceiling then, since it's a practical?
No, it's actually a normal height ceiling of what you would have in a space or a hospital. It's about the same. Yeah, oh. It's pretty low.
Wow. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it's okay, gotcha. And where is the show mostly being shot? Is it? I thought it would be a stage, but is it a location then somewhere?
So it's on stage.
Okay, it's on stage.
It's all built mm-hmm. by the production designer Nina Roscoe. She's amazing, and she did an incredible job on this set. So we're shooting Warner Bros. Studios, and it's 95% of the show is shot. We have two stages. We have one for the ER, the main ER, and one is for the waiting area, mm-hmm. right, the waiting room and all of that. So the stage are made in the way that the end of one is identical to the beginning of the other one, so you feel like you're connecting the stage together basically. But yeah, we have very few locations. We have the exterior ambulance when they go on the backside, right, to receive the ambulance. This is shot in Burbank at St. Joseph Hospital. And then we have the Pittsburgh location. So the lobby of the hospital is actually shot in Pittsburgh at the actual, I forgot the name of the hospital, but it's shot in the Pittsburgh Hospital, and the exterior of Pittsburgh, and the rooftop and the helicopter. This is all Pittsburgh.
The show has got a lot of action, a lot of drama, and some incredible prosthetics, like all kinds of just like, gore and, body, intricate internals and externals of people and things. I got to say, it looks so good on camera. How does it feel in person? When you're looking at it, you're like, yeah, all of that sells? Or is there some extra digital visual effects happening on top of it? How much of that is practical? How much is that is happening right in front of you?
I wish I could show you the picture on set where we have this shot happening and everyone is half looking, It's very real, and the way we see it on TV is what we see on set. I mean, there's very few VFX on this thing. Only things that we don't have the choice and we had to add a little bit of VFX. But for example, episode 1, the ankle, the way it looks in the show is what it looked like on set, except the sound, right? That's the only. Yeah,
that ankle, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's pretty traumatic to watch. You have to see that right quite early in the show, and there's.
The prosthetic work is absolutely outstanding on the show, and it really looks like that on set. It's crazy what they did, yeah.
And the blocking that you're doing with, obviously you're not cutting into people and you're not sticking needles and stuff in them, but the dressings and way that it's done, the way that things are framed, it looks so much like you were like the action is happening to the actors that are right there, and your camera is right in there. It's like some of that feels pretty wide and very close. It's like, it's hard to fake that. That is like the type of stuff that's like, when you're across a room and it's really telephoto and there's a lot of like very shallow focus, you can get away with a lot more. You guys are showing everything. There isn't a lot of cheats and stuff, which is that sort of like reality of like visceral moments. Is that very intentional? Is like you're trying to show what's going on, or what's the thought process of how much do you see or how little do you see, or is that a director's call? How does that come together for the show? It's almost like the gore is its own character.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. This really comes from the show creators. They really want to be realistic on what do they see and what does it feel like to be in an ER, and they just watch these things and they keep moving on, and then they have to tell the family that they just lost the daughter, and then they keep moving on, and it's they wanted the rawness of all of it, so they didn't want to hide. They wanted to show really what you see in an ER shift. So that comes from that. Obviously it's integrated in the scripts, and then it's integrated with the directors when they come in. We know what we want to see or not. All of this is talked for them in prep with the prosthetic work. So you're right. When you see needles coming in or cuts, it's happening like on the actor, but with a prosthetic.
Yeah.
So it's always, there's always a metal plate under, so there's no way it can cross anything. So safety-wise, it's complete. You can't pass anything, but it's all placed on the actors. That's correct, and that's why it looks so real, because it's
real. It's happening.
Yeah. It's real, except it's not touching them. But it's the prosthetic is made like it looks like it's part of them. And it's not. But yeah.
All right. So I could imagine that a show like this, which seems so fast-paced on the screen, is moving equally fast-paced behind the scenes. Does it feel rushed? Does it feel hurried? Because I feel like the complexity that you've got going on needs all the time. It needs all the rehearsal. It needs all the stuff. What is the pace of your typical episode look like? Is an episode a week? How much time do you have to make the show?
Yeah, so an episode, which is about 75 pages roughly, because of the medical description and all that, is 9 days of shoot.
9 days of shooting.
So we shoot that in 9 days. Yes, that's correct. Which means, we are about 9-10 pages a day. We shoot extremely fast, actually. But, there's a lot of things that are unique on this show, and that's why we can do it that way. It's, we come in at call time, we read the line, we do the blocking, and then we're ready to shoot because the lighting is integrated. It's happening so fast. We know the space so well. It's mostly the same space all the time, The cameras are ready to go. So we're shooting fully handheld or ZG. Our A camera is often on the ZG rig, which is a Steadicam vest with an arm, and then it's another tool, etc. But so that's how we get, movement backward, faster, following characters and all that. It's a lot controlled, but it has a handheld feeling.
For sure.
So basically, and we don't even have tripods. So we don't have tripods on set or in the truck. So basically, we all ready to go.
Okay.
So once we talk about the shot, and then we do a rehearsal, and then we go. So. And a lot of scenes sometimes are combined, right? Because it's this feeling that never stops. So sometimes, actually pretty often, we combine scenes together, and that's how we flow through our day. So once we start in the morning, it doesn't stop until lunch, and then when we come back to lunch, it doesn't stop until we wrap.
Wow.
And we never shoot 12 hours a day. I mean, I think it happened maybe a couple times in the full season. We shoot less than that. We shoot around 11 hours a day, and that's always been scheduled up.
Wow, fantastic.
So it's a unique format, really.
It sounds like the actors get a lot of takes. It sounds like they get a lot to do because they don't have to so much not waiting on camera, not waiting on lighting, not waiting on things. So that's fascinating. Tell me what else makes this production unique. It doesn't sound like any other production. I've heard about people shooting 360. I've heard about people integrating lights, but it really sounds to me like you kind of started from scratch and we said, the usual playbook is this, but we're doing it completely differently. How does, I know that's got to come from you because you're the head of all of these technical departments. So what's the inspiration for moving into all this like that like this so differently?
Yeah. Well, the way they pitched it to me, that was their vision at the beginning with John Wells and Marcus Rick, the executive producer. They saw the show like they wanted it to be real, documentary feeling, but still stay cinematic. That was really the idea behind it. And so when I read the scripts, I felt it was so clear in the way it needed to be. And like I mentioned earlier, you need to be immersed in the middle of it. So what's different about the show? It's an experience. It's an experience for the audience, but it was also an experience for the crew shooting it and the cast, We were really inside that bubble, inside that ER set with the cast and crew, together. And also involved in the story. I think this is a big point that feels different sometimes from other shows for the crew, because they all had to be so involved in the story and understand really well the points to hit, because there's not a lot of time or takes to actually explore too much. They're exploring, but it's gonna make sense. So it's gonna be right. So I think everyone felt so involved in the story itself, but so involved with the cast. There was no separation between cast and crew. And speaking of, actually, fun fact, we were all wearing scrubs on set.
I was wondering about that.
Many reflections. Yes. So we melted even more with the cast. And the background. So that's the thing. Okay. So because of the reflections everywhere, John Wells had the idea to put everyone in scrubs. So then if you get caught by accident, you just look like, you're working in the ER and it doesn't matter, right? So then, the background, like there's patients, but there's also nurses, etc. Some of our nurses and background as well are actually real nurses from hospital. So they come in the week for the set, and the weekend they would go back to their job, But also we work, each episode had a doctor assigned to make sure the scenes were realistic, etc. It really felt like we were all part of that ER, even though it's a show. But we all felt really part of the system. We were all dressed in scrub, melting with the background. You have to realize the background is here for 8 months.
Yeah.
That's unheard of on a show. Background comes and go, right? But here you have the same background from the beginning to the end. So they were a full part of the family as well, and it's really that... It's a lot of people on set, because we had over 100 background, and to feel that busyness of the ER. So it's everyone working together, camera choreographing with background, with cast, and lighting following and all that. So this only works because everyone really did it together and was involved in the story together. And I think that's really what made it a special and unique experience.
You know, when you said ZG, it immediately clicked with me too, because like I'm familiar with the ZG. Charles Pappert, the inventor, is a friend of the show. He's been on several times. But what I was going to say is that the show feels handheld, but it feels very controlled handheld. It feels like some of the nicest handheld you ever saw. And I think it's probably has a lot to do with the fact that it's the ZG kind of gives you that handheld feeling, even though the operator gets to still wear a complete Steadicam and gets to move around in a more free manner and move, frankly, quicker than I think some people could when they have to be handheld and, you know, stumble and losing their peripheral vision all around them because their face is in a viewfinder. Can you talk a little bit about I mean, just because the ZG, since you brought it up and it fit in so naturally, ZG doesn't sponsor us or anything, but I think that it's a unique, interesting bit of tech that maybe most of the world hasn't really heard of, but it kind of fills an interesting sort of niche that there isn't anything else out there that does what it does.
Absolutely. It's actually funny. Charles Pappert did come on set one day and to visit us and see how we were working with the ZG. Yeah. The ZG was honestly key for us for a few reasons. We had tried the slingshot on episode 1. It was a different tool we were using, but we had a lot of reflection issue because the slingshot has, two arms like this. Yeah. And we have so much glass on set. It was a nightmare, even though our glass, our gimbal, we can gimbal the glass and all this, it was really difficult. Also, you're passing background, you're following actors, we're just hitting everyone. So the ZG is great because it's all more below, right? So here you go, you start avoiding everything above you, that might be in the reflection. Second of all, we needed to be able to adjust the height during the shot. If you just handheld, you can squint, but you have to walk at the same time, it's extremely hard.
It's so hard on your legs.
Yes, it's going to be hard on your legs, and it's not going to be controlled, like you say. It's not going to be smooth. So the height adjustment, of the ZG was really key for you following character, and then he looks down, boom, you go to the gurney, and then you come back, And so all this movement was so important that it feels okay to watch. It's so intense, the show already. It keeps moving. It's all handheld. I was already worried how the audience is going to feel. So you want to make sure you control your handheld because otherwise you're going to lose everyone, But the tool was really important for, like you said, that control and that precision, so we could really move it. Don't get me wrong, I think this is an extremely hard tool to control. I think you really need to be really good at it to do a good job at it. And, I should have mentioned his name before, but Ertal, my A-camera operator on the show, is absolutely fantastic on the ZG. And all credits to him for the control he has on his shots because it's not easy. I tried the tool on and it's not easy.
No. I mean, it just makes it look easy. It's one of those things that the people
It makes it look easy, but
the people who are really good at it, they make it look so easy. But yeah, it's just every single part of your body has to be so ready and move, and it's just these little tiny adjustments, and there's 50 pounds. It's a whole to do. But I think that really it feels like the look of your show. The look of your show is created because you've got this really cool tool that allows you to move around so precisely and what looks effortlessly in these frenetic moments of action and drama. So, kudos to you for coming up with this really fantastic look. Tell me a little bit about your collaboration with the directors. I know you've got multiple directors who've come in, including Kian Tran, who's been on the show, who's a friend of the show. Tell me about the process of, you've got, I think, six directors, moving from director to director and continuing the continuity and then taking in their unique twists on the story. What's that like for you?
Yeah, so John Wells opened the show on episode 1, right? And it was great because him and I were really trying to define on that pilot what it was going to be and set the tone for the other directors coming after. So John Wells did number 1, and then he did number 15, which was so amazing to see because then we had found our full, rhythm and all this, and it was so smooth when we did 15 together because now we knew exactly what the show was, right? So then, we had another director, Amanda Marsalis, and she's fantastic. She's actually a photographer as a background, She's super visual, and I think, the director, John Wells, had showed them what he did on episode 1, and they really understood the style of the show and the immersion feeling of it. I think they all have their own little touch they put on the episode, which I think is what is great to have different directors, because then it feels, something different, but it doesn't feel like a different show. You know what I mean? And I think that's what makes the episode a bit more special. But it was a pretty easy transition because they really understood the style of the show. It was pretty clear, And I feel like, sometimes there was, maybe, we were not sure if that would fit in the show, and we would talk about it. And, worst case, you shoot it, and then if they can use it or not use it, it doesn't matter because we had time. And, but we discovered new things too. As we kept going, I felt like we discovered new things we liked that we kept integrating in the style, because new director would bring something new and we're like, but that fits well in the show. Let's use that, and then we would use that with the next director, etc., etc. We also work with Damien Marcano, fantastic director as well, and I think he has such a nice flow. So each director, really had something else that they brought to the show that I kept using for next directors as well, if that makes any sense, right?
That makes perfect
sense. And then
sense.
Q came in, obviously. Yeah, Q came in, and she's great, and she loves this kind of shots. She's really used to be close to the characters and follow them, and so she understood the style very well as well. We had John Cameron, who's a fantastic director as well. They already, I feel very lucky because we already got along and understood the show really well all together. And I thought that was so important. And we had also Silvertree, fantastic director as well. So very smooth transition from one director to the other. The only thing is the first time I worked with each of them, I was trying to make sure that I have a conversation with them before so they would know how we work. I was like, okay, here's what happens. We just do the blocking, and then we talk about whose scene is this? Who are we following right now? And what do we need to see? And then we define the move together, and then with BCAM, we'll kind of steal moments. And then we clean up, So we try to do the longest take we can to shoot that scene, while BCAM steal other moments or cutaway points. And then we clean up what we didn't get, that we need, etc. So I kind of just explained the flow, and then, then it was easy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. And it sounds like you got to, absorb a lot from working with all these people. You've done some television before. You did the series called The Rookie. And I want to ask you, where did you get when did you get started in this? When did you decide, or when did you get the idea that being a cinematographer was a career, was something that you were going to go after?
Yeah, I grew up in France. I guess you can tell.
What? I'm surprised.
This full time I had my American accent on.
you were fooling me. Yeah, so you grew up in France, and were you? So
I kind of always loved exploring different ideas of job. One day I wanted to make clothes when I was younger, and then I wanted to be a doctor, and then I wanted to do something else. I just felt like really frenetic of trying everything, And then, like a lot of people, I ended up, having like a little camera to do little movies with my friends when I was 14 years old. And I realized I was just behind the camera the whole time. I loved it. And the stories we were making, we were kind of exploring different jobs, different personalities through the lens everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. So when I kept growing up, and actually I did a major in science, believe it or not, but I was maybe meant to go in science, but I love the idea to be able to do every single job or explore every single personality in the world through lens. I felt like that job, cinematography, I can get it all. And that's really what it felt like. You can explore, and I learned about every single job all the time. Look, I'm learning everything about doctors. I learned about cops with The Rookie. I shot a documentary on the tattoo artist, so I know everything about the tattoo world. It's the only job that really gets you the opportunity to explore everything. So that's how I fell in love with cinematography.
Yeah, it's quite unique that way. There's maybe as like a writer or other types of artists, there's like the only other types of careers that maybe give you the ability to sample and try all these different things. But okay, so there's a question that I used to ask DPs all the time. When I first started this podcast, I would say that I think to be the best possible DP, you have to be part artist and part plumber. Now, that blend of artist and plumber is going to be different for everybody. You can't be all artist and no plumber, and you can't be all plumber and no artist. You have to have that right blend. Where do you feel like you feel in that spectrum? Are you more towards the art, more towards the plumber? How does your brain work with cinematography?
Yeah, I like to think I'm half and half. I mean, the science background is my proper background, basically, and I use it every single day in my craft because I always said the hardest thing is to get the ideas, right? Mm-hmm. And then I know how to make it happen technically then, or I know how to research how to make it happen. But I always think the hardest part is the brainstorming part, because if you have the idea, you'll find a way to make it, to create it. So I like to think half and half because I love, everything about brainstorming and shots and what is the story telling us and how we want to approach it, all this thing. It's very artistic. And then it's the technical part. Okay, so now that I know exactly creatively what do I want it to look like or feel like, let me go find out the tools that I need. I would already say it's a half and half, but I always start with creativity first, because for me the tools are only here to support creativity. So the reverse wouldn't work for me. It's like, I really want to use these lenses of cameras, but it might not be the right story. So you want to make it the other way, in my opinion. Yes.
Do you have a particular genre or style of shooting that you feel like you are more attracted to than others? I mean, getting to do a medical show is super cool, but it's very like niche. Now, there's not a lot of those that happen over time. Is there a type of genre that is like your favorite type to work in? What do you prefer?
I honestly like doing different genres because I don't like to do the same thing over and over again. But there's one driven thing for me in stories, no matter what, it's the characters, psychology and development. Like, is that a character story? And that's what drives me to any story. So, we saw in the Pitt, it's such a character piece, and I love that. There's so much emotion to transmit, so many things to tell visually. I always say I'm a visual psychologist, and I feel like I get my what I need on the Pitt, because there's so many psychology to explore there. So this is more what it is. It's like, what is the character? It could be in a comedy, it could be, in a thriller. Maybe we see it a little more in thrillers, because especially in psychological thrillers, maybe, you have a bit more exploring on characters there. But if this character is strong and there's something very interesting to dig in, I love this kind of genre.
Yeah, there's a lot of contrast in a show that you would not think that there would be so much contrast. Now, I'm not saying like contrast is in dark, but you have a lot of different shades in the, it's a high key show, but there's still contrast that's going on. Can you talk a little bit about how conscious? I mean, I'm sure that it must be a battle when you're dealing with integrated lights. And I know you've got the gaffer and the ability to control and adjust levels on the fly, but do you find yourself quite often that what you're doing is taking light away to create more contrast on the show? Or how are you maintaining the drama and the contrast that happens in this high key scenario?
Yeah, I think it depends where they are on the set too. I think when they're really in the middle, they're very exposed and there's not that much contrast, but that's what you want. They're just exposed in the middle and they can hide or they can't really show too much emotions because they're in the middle of work. But, every time they go in the corner or, they're in the elevator or other things, you'll see more contrast, but it's natural because there's just less lights there, Yes, sometimes we are taking away a bit light on the ceilings to create more contrast if we want to, but I think a lot of time it happens naturally within where they are on the set because story-wise it makes sense.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was some negative fills or other things getting turned off or things that were like little tricks. Yeah, exactly.
Well, all of this is for inside the set of DER. When we've been exterior night on location,
it's a different
we're approaching lighting much more in the normal way. But yes, for this set, it's like this.
Well, tell me about this boom pole light that you said that you've also got too. This sort of like thing that kind of like floats in. Is it like is it literally a boom pole? Is it a C-stand arm? What is coming in? What is this light?
So we call it we call it the dot dash.
Okay.
So the dot, is I don't want to say something wrong, but that I don't know if you know dot dash. So it's the battery operated light with the dome in front of it.
Roscoe. Yeah.
And so we have it on. Yeah, exactly. So we have it like on the pole behind. Yes. So
gotcha.
that's what it is. Yeah.
That's smart.
And we actually. we're thinking of developing something maybe a little more customized for next year, so we can get even more punch out of it. Because sometimes we felt like we had to bring two of them, so it's another electrician moving with us. So we're trying to limit how many people are moving with the camera. But yes, it's it's been very helpful to fill in the faces, and especially with all the different skin tones we have. Sometimes some people get more light than others, so it's been helping a lot.
Has there been one setup or one shot or one episode or something in particular that so far has been your favorite of the series? Is there something that you go back to that you're trying to, that you love the magic in one thing? And if so, what is that? What is the one part of the show that really connected with you?
It's a tough question because it's a continuous day. So, it's hard when we ask me what favorite scene is there. It's hard because they're all one thing. So for me, it all blends together. There's a few things I love. Like there's a really long shot actually in episode 4 that is not cut at all, and I don't even think we shot coverage for this. It's the way it was planned, and I think it was not just to do a long cool shot. It's because it made perfect sense for that moment for the story, and I really loved that in that episode. It's when Dr. Robbie and Dana are walking, and then there's this other girl who had the fentanyl I don't know how you said, the fentanyl event happening, that then she lives with her parents, and then as she goes, there's the gurney of the other guy with the fentanyl thing arriving, and she sees the parents, and it's all continuous. The shot doesn't cut, but you just feel like stuck with it, and you just have to watch, and it's like things after things after things, you know what I mean? And I just love that. I thought it was great. I love the mass casualty events episode. They're shot honestly pretty differently in a way that it's not only like passing through the middle and then going in rooms. Now you're not in rooms anymore. It's all on the open. So the camera doesn't move physically as much, which is interesting, right? But it just catches more things on the foreground, background, etc. It connects more things together. And I thought that was really interesting how that was shot too. I like that. I like the diversity of it. In a way, it all feels the same. And in a way, we had to use different approaches and techniques shooting it. We actually brought in a third camera for these episodes because there was so much going on with all this laying out in the central station that we brought a third camera to get extra reaction, etc. because we didn't have time to shoot all of this. So it was very tricky to shoot. Like, we really had to think about everything we need to show, and like everything that was happening, one corresponding with the other one in the background, foreground, but then the other one comes in, and what is his one, and then where is he going, and then wow. It was very challenging, but it was very rewarding at the same time. I think the episodes really turned out.
So you've got this complicated choreography of cameras. I assume that you've got multiple cameras rolling at the same time, multiple focus pullers, either standing at their own sort of video villages or, roaming around, because, that's the way that everyone does it these days. The focus puller has a monitor. They can see what's happening. Tell us about how many cameras you're using, who your team is, what's the layout like when it's rolling? Is it A sticks, B sticks, C sticks? What's happening?
Yeah, so we are a 2-camera show. We have our A camera operator Erdem Ertal that's operating either on the ZG or handheld, and is on primes. This is the camera we use for the long shots, following the characters, etc. We have our big camera operator, Amy Sulik. She lives on a zoom, actually, not because we're using the zoom as an effect, but because she can resize really fast quickly during the shots, and the zoom is a perfect match of the prime. So she's fully handheld, and she would hide in places. Sometimes she would literally hide behind a counter, and then the character pass by and she'll pop in, get the shot, and then move out, and then replace herself somewhere else, resize, and get another moment. So we're using her camera as our like something to complete basically the shots on things we're not getting on A-cam. And sometimes she's here too. Sometimes we have done two sizes at the same time if it's a bit more normal coverage situation or anything like that, But otherwise on the big long shots, she's stealing moment, and she's been really excellent at it. She's been finding amazing frames and amazing moments, and they use in the show. And then our first ACs, so on A-cam Jacob Depp, and then on B-cam Kirsten Sello. So they actually have to hide, you're right, with their monitors because it's such an open set, right? They can't follow cameras. There's too many people following camera. So they find a space where they're hidden, sometimes behind a curtain or something, where they can pull focus. And, they're being extremely creative and extremely adaptable because, like I said, we don't have any marks. And we do one rehearsal, and the camera moves non-stop and keeps adjusting. So our focus pullers are really brilliant and excellent at their job because they just can go with the flow, and they also have to make creative decision about where the focus go. We would talk at the beginning, in rehearsals, like what are we looking for, but they have to make creative decision non-stop, and they've been really good at it.
So I know that we were talking just before we started, just before we started rolling about the lenses that you were using, and of course those Optimo Primes are very fast, and the compact zoom is a little bit slower, but still these are fast lenses. Do you give your assistants a deeper stop? Because stop directly translates to how much depth of field. How challenging is their job to be finding the focus on the fly like this? Are you shooting wide open all the time? I know this is getting a little into the weeds. I'm losing some of our audience, but I know that we have another part of our audience which really, really wants to know about how deep of a stop you're working at.
No, that's something I definitely took in consideration. We're shooting full frame too, so I had to be very conscious about the focus because I knew it was no marking and it was going to keep flowing and it's going to not be a lot of text, honestly. So when we lit the set, when we take a lighting set, I wanted to go at a T4 on the lenses. And that's what we've been shooting at inside the stage. So we've been at a constant T4 almost all the time. There's only very few situations where we had to change it, but almost never. It's been a constant T4. And that was the perfect balance for me, where I felt it gave the AC a shot to get things sharp most of the take, but also kept this nice cinematic feeling as well.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect stop for the show. So Joanna, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you if they want to? Of course, they can go look at your work on IMDb, and they can look at the Pitt on Max right now. But where can people find you? Do you do any social media? Do you do any of that sort of stuff?
Yes, I'm trying to be a bit more active on social media. I'm not the best at it, but I do have Instagram. So it's Johanna, JOHANNA _ Coelho, COELHO. So that's where we can find me on Instagram.
All right. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes over at Cam Noir. Hey, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great to chat with you about this.
Same. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, so that was Johanna Coelho. Hey, thank you so much again for being on the show. We can't wait to have you back on and talk about what you do next.
Awesome.
Hey, Ben, it is time for us to pay the bills. We got to thank our fine friends over at Laowa.
That was the booth that was right behind your booth at the thing at the NAB.
That's exactly right. So Venus Lenses, also known as Laowa. Laowa makes incredible cine lenses for the entertainment industry and all kinds of other stuff. But I want to draw some attention right now to particularly unique, particularly record-setting products that they have come up with, which are these zero distortion wide angle lenses that are super small and super light. They have a 9, a 10, a 12, a 14 that are in these various mounts, PL mounts and different things, many different mounts available, but industry standard PL mount. And they are incredibly wide. And most of them, I think all but the 9, have a zero distortion VistaVision sensor size coverage view. So
I assumed it was Super 35.
It is not. These are VistaVision lenses, and they're this big, and they weigh nothing.
2 years ago, it would have been VistaVision. Who's using VistaVision? Now everyone's using the VistaVision.
And it's not that they're slow either. The 10 millimeter is 2.9, the 12 is 2.9, the 14 is 2.6. It gets faster. Only the 9 millimeter, which they don't advertise zero distortion, is a 5.8. And I understand a 9 VistaVision is insane. I mean, really what we're talking about is nothing. There's nothing else out there that's like a 9 that covers.
I mean, that's like the equivalent. If
like,
it was a Super 35, wouldn't that be like the equivalent of like a 4 millimeter lens or something like
correct.
that?
I expect people will start seeing this used in music videos. I think they'll start seeing it used in very specialty type of applications. But it's a pretty dramatic effect to see a VistaVision size field, like that's incredible. Even like, it's not a big difference though to the 10, and that's a 2.9, and that has zero distortion. The 10 is incredible. So
which again, that's like in Super 35 land, that's like a 5 or a 6.
Exactly. And all of these lenses are, of course, available through Hot Rod Cameras. So if you would like to place an order or need more information or would like to test them, reach out to hotrodcameras.com and we can get you hooked up with the greatest new stuff from Venus Laowa Lens.
Pretty awesome. Love their booth.
And now, short ends.
So, Ben, it is our short end time of the show. I know we were just talking about NAB. You got a short end or an obsession, something for you is you're all about this week.
I gotta say, like the new Adobe Premiere, this release, and maybe within the last year, because there've been a few releases that I think have made some really big strides, and I think a lot of it is also just under the hood in terms of if you have 8K footage, it's not going to hang up on your computer. It's going to play through pretty well. But there are a couple of things that they added, and these were in the beta. Some of them, one was in the beta that I had messed around with, but it was clunky in the beta, and it is pretty awesome in the regular release, and that is generative extend. So, we talk a lot about AI, finding its way into all of these things. DaVinci Resolve has an AI that will make a closer shot, a wider shot for you. Like it'll use generative AI to make your shot wider, which you can sort of do with Adobe and Photoshop. But what generative extend does is it lengthens your shot. So let's say that you have an interview or something, and you just wish you had, because it'll only lengthen it right now by 2 seconds, but I wish I could hang on this person for another second, half a second. That happens all the time. You can take the generative extend, and it is using Firefly, which is Adobe's AI, proprietary AI, to literally extend the shot. I have messed around with it, and before it only worked with HD footage, and I think it was only 24p HD footage. Now it kind of works with everything, although I found that there's some codecs or color spaces it doesn't seem to like you've got to be in Rec 709. But I'm kind of shocked at how amazing it works. And it's one of those tools that if you edit a lot, you've definitely been in a situation where you're like, I have to cut you off right here, but I wish I had another second. And, I suppose you could take that, bake it out, bring it back in and extend it by 2 seconds indefinitely. No, wouldn't be wise. That would be a fun experiment to see how long it would take for it to just get weird. But it's a cool little thing. And then there's another thing that they added, which, Michael Cioni put it in Strata, and it was one of the features in Strata that I was most excited about. And I still think the Strata application of it is better. But it's really cool that they put this into Adobe Premiere, which is that you can use, it's using AI to search your footage, and you could say, if a dog runs by in the background in a shot, if you punch in dog, it'll bring you the shots, every shot with a dog in it, or it'll bring you every shot that someone says the word dog in it. And it's called Media Intelligence, and I've tried it out on a longer form documentary project that I was working on, and like all AI things, it's sometimes imprecise and sometimes gives you weird results, but I mean, it's just a search. So it's just using AI to look at your footage and say, oh, here's everything that's in every shot. And again, I think the Strata application is better, but it's really cool that this is finding its way into Premiere. They also added something I've never needed, but now you can translate closed captions into, I think it's 27 languages or something. That's handy if you're doing deliverables to multiple countries and stuff like that. There's a bunch of new things, and also, if I may say so, there's a slight aesthetic thing that they did, and it isn't in this release. It was in the last release, but it's actually I can't believe how much I like it because it's stupid. But when you put a cut in a shot and you're looking at it on the timeline, it curves. It makes like a little Bezier curve right where the cut is. So you can see the cuts more easily when you're kind of scouring through your edit. And it just makes for a more pleasant aesthetic experience. But also it does speed you up because you know where the cut is. Because sometimes you're looking at it and there's the clip name and there's clips all over the place and stuff like that. And it's hard to identify like, oh yeah, there's where the cut is. But anyway, my love affair with Adobe Premiere continues. Anyway, so that's about it for me. Ilya, what is your pet obsession this week?
Andor is the best Star Wars thing I have seen in decades. Legitimately is. And it has a very large budget. And they put a lot of effort into it. And the brilliant minds of a bunch of smart people working behind the scenes to turn that into something. And I feel like it is the first Star Wars thing I've seen in a very long time that is not trying to either pander to kids, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think that some of the other stuff they've done that are very much kids movies are spectacular. And at the same time, it's got a methodical and like very adult pacing where like this just happens to be a story set in the Star Wars universe.
But it's Tony Gilroy and Tony Gilroy.
Exactly.
Tony Gilroy notoriously could give two shits about Star Wars, period. So he's like using, he's said he could have, this could be a modern day.
Could have been modern day. It could have been like, a World War II story.
I appreciate the total lack of space wizards in Andor. Like it doesn't feel like Star Wars in the goofiest possible senses of it. At the same time, I love The Mandalorian full of space wizards. Who cares? Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's a huge spectrum, but I think that, Andor season 1, I have just now rewatched the entire thing in anticipation of Andor season 2, which comes out next week. So I think it's April 22nd. So
hey, that's my birthday.
Oh, yeah, look at that. So on your birthday, you can watch Andor season 2. Now, they've been very tight-lipped about Andor. There is a little bit of stuff out there. There's a trailer. I've watched none of it. I've tried to keep myself completely blank going in. I've prepared myself now by, being sick in bed. I had a lot of time to watch Andor, so I went back and did it. So I am now prepped and ready for the new season to drop next week. And I will tell you that I think it must be good because there isn't really any sort of like critical buzz or anything. There isn't but suddenly today, like there was a bunch of trade articles that appeared of cast doing interviews, things happening. So I'm getting excited. I'm getting excited that here is some geeky sci-fi thing that is Star Wars that I'm actually into. It's like, how exciting is that for me? I didn't really get to have that.
Brings you right back to the 80s.
Well, I was going to say there were so many other things along almost the last, can't even tell you how many movies they were like, yeah, they're fine, they're whatever. It's Marvel style entertainment. It just washes over you. No, okay, it was a movie. I've never been an obsesso, but this was like, this is really great. I'm now really excited about something. So if you haven't watched Andor, you still got time. You got a week. You can catch up on the season 1. And let me tell you, I still think episode 1. Worst episode of Andor. Doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just like if you're going to talk about like the hierarchy of all these episodes, you actually have to get through quite a lot of exposition. Episode 1, episode 2.
It has to lay a bit of pipe.
That's right. Once they do that, though, God, I gotta say
that was actually the hardest thing that I had when season 1 dropped. It took me a few tries to get through episode 1, and then after that, I got it. And it looks great. It's not that it's bad. It's just.
No, I was like, I can't watch this at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some things happening here. They're giving me a lot of information, but I can't really watch this now. So it's like, two or three times I had to try to get through. But then
after that, like it was smooth sailing, and there's it was like a 2-parter at a prison that I thought was pretty.
That is a mid-season climax, which is phenomenal. So that's really incredible. Anyway, so Ben, that does it for this episode. Where can people find you if they want to check you out?
You can find me at benrock.com. That's about the best place. You can find all my socials, watch my reel, which is starting to feel a little long in the tooth now. I need to update it. But say hi to me on social media. How about yourself, Ilya? They can find you in the COVID colony that we're creating off the coast of Portland. It's like a leper colony for COVID patients.
Yes, I'm going to probably be quarantined here for a bit longer. But yes, afterwards, you can find me at Hot Rod Cameras. You can find me at Hot Rod Cameras Portland, hopefully in a week. And then in May, I'll be back in Los Angeles at Hot Rod Cameras. But you can, of course, reach out to me through there, and I will get back to you. Ben, who do we have to thank who made this show possible?
As always, Johanna Coelho, our superstar, our North Star, our Lodestar.
Lodestar, all right.
Yeah. Like, where would we be without Alana? Nowhere. We'd be pumping out one of these every 4 months. Anyway, kicking all the ass. Got to hang out with both you and her at NAB, and apparently you both got sick and I didn't. So nanny boo boo, stick your head in doo doo, I guess. We got to thank Charlie Nix. Got to hang out with Charlie Nix a whole lot there, our editor, and he's awesome and a cool guy, and he edits all of this stuff, and hopefully got rid of all your coughs and made me sound like 10% less of an idiot. I don't know.
Charlie also got sick, so hopefully he's doing better too.
Oh, get well, Charlie. And then I actually got to hang out with Michael Indispensable Dispenza at the show too. It was kind of fun to hang out with all you guys.
Yeah, it was great. I'm glad that we made this happen.
And then last, we got to thank Kays Alatrachi, who composed every speck of music that you've heard on this entire episode. Check him out at musicbykays.com. Hire him to do one of the many things he does really well.
Yes, indeed. You should definitely hire him. And I'll just do a quick reminder that we do have an official website, which is camnoir.com, where there is show notes, copious show notes. And actually, in this episode, I think is the first one, we're actually listing the tech specs. We got the tech specs from Joanna for the Pitt. So there is camera and lens information that's going to be listed there next to that one. So, people can use it as a resource. They want to look up what camera and lenses were used on a show. We're going to be recording that there so people can reference it.
That's really smart. I can't believe we haven't done that yet.
I know we never did it, but
I mean, American cinematographer has only been doing that for 30 years in every article.
I know, and I feel like we missed an opportunity here for the last 11 years. We could have been asking people, but we'll do it going forwards.
Ilya, would you like to take us out?
Why not? Thanks for tuning in.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.